Greetings, welcome back. So we're going to talk about Nashville, and I have the Minnesota one, and then we're done the previews for 2020. And we start getting into season stuff after this. So for Nashville and Minnesota, the two teams I've saved for last, they're both interesting teams in terms of their place. Now, for Nashville, they're still in the Central. Minnesota, however, is in the Western Division. Going to take a while to get used to the division names, and the fact that some of these teams aren't in the same division for this year. And of course, the divisions go back to normal next year. This is just a one-year thing. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. For Nashville, there's some interest too because 2 years ago, 117 points, President's Trophy, and all the pennants. They had all the pennants. They won an award for the most awards that they gave themselves. Then 2018, 2019, they dropped to 100 points. Last year, projected over 82 games, they would have had 93 points. So it's a decline, and they need to reverse that. Now, I think that they can. I'm the only one. The Hockey News has them 20th in their power rankings. Sports Forecaster has them 7th in the Central. I have them 4th. And I was debating about 4th or 5th, but they just brought back Granlund. They added Howla, and I thought, you know what? The forward group, I like it better than Dallas's. I will throw them in at 4th in the Central. So there you go. There have been times where I've been accused of hating on Nashville. I'm now the one that's picking Nashville to go to the playoffs. So there you go. You're welcome. Out off the roster from last year, Bonino, Smith, Turris, Watson, Hamhuis, Weber, which means, and this is a sad day, there will be nobody with the last name Weber on that blue line. I remember when they traded Shea Weber and then they signed Yannick Weber, and I thought, oh, that was a close one. They almost didn't have somebody named Weber on the blue line. Now they don't. And Santini, and of course Santini's notable in that he was part of the return for PK Subban. So we'll see. We'll see how things go for them. When we look at the big additions, you've got Cunnin coming in from Minnesota. Borowiecki, who, is a solid bottom two option for these guys. It is going to be really weird to see Borokop in a jersey that is not the Ottawa Senators. That is going to look wrong. It's going to take a while for that to change. And Granlund, I have an asterisk next to, but technically he's an addition because he was a UFA and he returns to Nashville. And Howla, who signed within the last 48 hours at the time I'm recording this. So there are reasons to think Nashville may very well be able to turn things around. But I also understand why people might be picking them as a team that's going to fall off the map. Again, you look at their points, they're tumbling each year. And when you look at the players who were too low, didn't score enough last year, Arvidsson really stands out. 57 games played, 15 goals, 13 assists, 28 points. He was not 100%. For parts of that season, but he just didn't look great. So I'm hoping he bounces back. He's my favorite member of the Predators, not named Rocco Grimaldi, and so I'm hoping he bounces back. Matt Duchene, 66 games, 13 goals, 29 assists, 42 points. Last summer, I said Duchene scored too many points, and there were people saying, yeah, Shannon, he just doesn't like Nashville. I will say, I thought Duchene didn't score enough last year. Duchene, realistically, over a 66-game period, should be scoring about 55 points. And so the 42 is way too low. And the problematic part of this, too, is that Johansson, at 68 games, 14 goals, 22 assists, and 36 points, that's too low as well. So they've got two centers in Duchene and Johansson who both underperformed, and they're paid a lot of money. That is a large part of their cap that goes to Duchene and Johansson. That's got to change. So, on the glass half empty part of things, I have that the vets need to justify those big contracts. I could have put up there that Rene's getting older, and we don't know whether or not Saros is necessarily going to be a starter. But since we're going to have this odd 56-game schedule over a shortened period of time, Rene's going to have to play as well. So, those veterans, those contracts, those are problematic at this stage. And if Duchene and Johansson don't both bounce back, then either one of or both of those contracts look just disastrous. So I will say I think Duchene has the better chance of bouncing back between the two, but we'll see, right? Rookie to watch, Philip Tomasino. So you can see how many players have left this team. There's definitely going to be a spot for Tomasino if he comes in and he's ready to grab that spot on the roster. Nashville could definitely use the youthful infusion to their lineup. Goals for last year, they had 3.07 goals per game, which is 16th. Goals against, 3.1, which was 20th. And that's really a huge part of the issue here. Being middle of the pack goals for, not a huge surprise, but being below the middle of the pack when it comes to goals against is an issue. Power play, 17.26%, continues to be a story for the wrong reasons, 24th overall. Penalty kill, 76.06%, 29th overall. So those numbers combine to add up to 93%. 100 is kind of considered a pass. 93 is massive issue. So if you look at those numbers, I can understand why you would say they likely continue to have this erosion in their points totals, and they could very well end up finding themselves lower in the standings. So again, I understand for people who are not believing that Nashville's going to make the playoffs. That being said, when you look at their core six, I kind of have to pick guys over the age of 26, which tells you they could probably use a bit more of the youthful infusion that was supposed to happen with Tolvanen. Tolvanen is supposed to be a big part of this team this year. He's not on the rookie to watch because I don't think he qualifies as a rookie anymore right now. And Tolvanen is going to either earn his keep this year or he's going to find himself exposed to Seattle. My guess is it'll be one or the other. Because, again, they're counting on him. And, you know, this may be his chance to get into the top six and play a bunch of minutes. The core six, I went with Forsberg. Johansson's a little bit older than the guys I normally put in the core six. Because I don't know that I see somebody down the middle who is that big centerpiece for them. Again, has to be a younger player. Arvidsson on the right side. And then Roman Josi, sorry. You know, when I do the Johansson thing, I want to say Johansson. Now I get to Josi and I want to say Josi. So there you go. Josi and Ellis. And I know Josi's a little bit older too. But when you look at that blue line, Fabro's the only one who's younger. And I can't put Fabro on there and not Ellis, who's 29, because it just doesn't look great. The core six thing is interesting. I'm really glad I did it because it is something completely different from other years that I've done previews where it's basically just the depth chart and you know, a little bit of stats here and there, but it's basically just the depth chart and here's your team. So the core six has kind of made me think about things a little bit differently. And of course, UC Saros is the now and the future in net. And the question marks about whether or not he's going to rise to the level that Rene did at his peak. Those are questions that rightfully are being asked, and I don't think we have the answers yet. Their coach, John Hines, depending on who you ask, either he's done a good job with Nashville or I can't believe we got John Hines. There doesn't seem to be an in-between there. General manager David Poyle, one of the most widely respected general managers, and also one that we'll see. I think this year's going to tell you a lot about just how many more years he may end up being the GM in Nashville. I can't see a situation where he ends up losing his job. I can't see it. He's been their general manager their entire existence. I just can't see him ending up out of a job at any point. But eventually you would think that people making those decisions would say, well, we'd like to win a Stanley Cup, and maybe Poyle's not the guy. So we'll see, right? He did fire a coach, which doesn't normally happen in Nashville, and brought in John Hines. So we'll see how things go for the team and for him as well. The glass half full side of things, their defense is really good, which is why being 20th in goals against is shocking. And yet, the goaltending wasn't great for the first, I'll say, half of the season. Rene and Saros were also in lockstep with each other, where if one wasn't playing very well, neither was the other. And then the separation occurred towards the end of the season where Saros was legit the starting goaltender. He was the better of the two. And while Rene's stats stayed, below average, Saros was picking it up towards the end of the year. And of course, once we reached playoff time, he was their starter. And again, part of the reason why you're going to see them getting dropped down by people is how they performed in the return against Arizona, and that they got taken out by the Coyotes. So there are reasons to be concerned, but I do think they make the playoffs. And their depth, there's depth. And again, we can talk about how Duchesne and Johansson didn't have great seasons, and it's true, but they have overall solid depth at their forward positions. Goaltending, defense, there's a lot of depth there. And then the question becomes one of, what is the quality of it? It's all NHL for the most part. This is why they could shed some players, bring other guys in to try to change things up, but the depth is still there. So we'll see. We'll see how things go for them. Now, I've talked about the glass half empty, so we'll move on to the next big hype, which I think is going to be Luke Evangelista. There was a large divide on him going into the 2020 draft, as in some saying he could be first round, could be second round, and then some saying don't draft him, just leave him. If Nashville does a good job with him, he'll be an NHL player, and Nashville's pretty good at developing their prospects. We'll see with Tolvanen this year. Whether or not he causes a hit on that reputation, but they're usually pretty good at their developing of players. So, yeah, I think Evangelista, probably the next one, who could be, at the very least, a very noteworthy pickup for them outside of the first round. So, their record month after month was kind of inconsistent, sort of like they were against Arizona when they came back in the play-in round. October, they were 8-3-2, and they looked great. They did. 4-7-2 in November, didn't look so great then. In December, 6-4-2, January 6-5-1, February 8-5-1. So February was a good month, and March they were off to a 3-2 start. And then, of course, we shut everything down. Now, the record against teams that will be in their division: against Carolina, they were 1-1. Against Chicago, 2-1-1. Against Dallas, 2-2. Against Detroit, 1-1. Against Florida, 0-1-1. Against Columbus, they won the only meeting they had with them last year. And against Tampa Bay, 1-0-1. So their record against teams in their own division, 8-6-3. So for Nashville, they're going to be looking to prove themselves and stay in the mix. And I do see them as a team that should make the playoffs, which means they probably would end up playing against Tampa in the first round. And that's not a situation that I think necessarily favors Nashville. But if Tampa doesn't have Kucherov, you get into all that talk. And does Kucherov being out mean that maybe Tampa doesn't end up finishing first? Maybe Carolina's got a shot? Be a lot of interesting storylines. But Nashville should be one to watch. Let me know your thoughts. And yes, this is the reverse retro, which has virtually the same logo on it as the one they have now, just with the silver, which is the original logo there with the silver that changed to yellow, because sure. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.